This is James Strawn. I'm here today with Rob Cunningham. Rob is one of the emerging leaders in the, well, I guess it's the anti-Common Core movement. I found that of interest, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. So I've invited Rob in today for this interview. And I guess let's just start from basics. What is Common Core, Rob?
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Common Core is a global standardized one-size-fits-all solution for education from the perspective of globalists that think a one-size-fits-all is a solution. It's a combination of standards, curriculum, testing, and teacher evaluations that are basically being imposed on the school systems across America to incorporate the SATs and the ACTs. And it's a radical transformation of the U.S. public education system, written basically in secret by a couple of trade associations, international companies, including Pearson Education. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have funded a lot of the information. Arne Duncan, the Secretary of Education, is strongly a supporter of this. It's elite, well-funded internationalists rewriting every aspect of government education packaged in a neat little package called Common Core.
Let me ask you about that. I worked in industry for years, and we used standards. We used the gap for accounting. We used some specific standards that probably nobody would realize for some of the IT work that I was engaged in. But how does this differ from that? Why are you concerned about this?
Well, first of all, it was done in secret. Secondly, there was no parental involvement. Thirdly, the individuals responsible for writing the curriculum, the standards, and the testing have precious little experience in either learning or teaching. They have very little classroom experience. There's a tremendous amount of money to be made in this retooling of the education system, and they're unproven. They're utterly and totally, completely unproven standards that have never been tested, and we're just ultimately going to experiment on every child with every teacher in every classroom in America because a couple of people think it's a good idea.
That's interesting. So you've mentioned a few names and a few companies. What is the scope? Who's engaged in this? What are the names? To name the names, who's really engaged in pushing forward the Common Core? And a little bit about the history. Where did it come from?
Sure. Well, the left, or the Democratic Party, has long been huge advocates of public education. Department of Education was founded under Jimmy Carter in 1979. At that point in time, students in America ranked in the top 5 in virtually all categories. Now they're in the low 20s, low 30s in many categories, whether it's science or engineering or reading or math. I mean, our test scores have plummeted for the most wealthy, prosperous country in the world. It's utterly a disaster. So the very thing that's taken us from the top 5 to 30th or 25th in the nation, they're about to give us a lot more of, to put it in perspective. 10 years ago, in the early 2000s, the same group of intellectuals that believed the government knows best and we can fix this education system and let's retool things, they took a stab at it, but they did it in a very clumsy way. Instead of tackling English and math, they tackled history. And they radically rewrote history. And then publicly they tried to implement it, and they were soundly defeated. They took away some lessons from that. They came back 10 years later. As soon as President Obama was inaugurated, it was built into his stimulus package, huge amounts of money to roll out version 2.0, if you will. This time, instead of being loud and confrontational, they went quiet and under the radar. Secondly, they chose math and English versus history. They wrote this body of rules and curriculum and strategies in private. After it was completed, they tried to say, oh, this was a collaboration of 45 chief state school officers, and it's rigorous standards, and we're going to test and bring everybody up. Bunk. Okay, they used this. There's a trade association in Washington, D.C. of the state school officers that got them to put their stamp of approval on it. But there's no rigorous standards. There's no field testing. There's no academic experts with in-classroom experience. The teachers weren't consulted. At first, the teachers' unions were completely behind this. They thought, great, this is going to be more funding, more control, more ability for us to do things the way we want them to be done. And now they've just recently, in the last year or so, understood that they're being elbowed out. Their voice isn't being heard. They just need to sit down, shut up, and fall in line, because those that are writing the standards, those that are publishing the textbooks, that are doing the testing and designing the curriculum are in control, and the teachers' unions sit down.
Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit what I assume would be the planks in the platform of Common Core. Are those three things that you described, math, English, history, if I'm sending my child to school, where is the Common Core going to touch them? What will they be learning that's impacted by these standards?
Everything. Everything's being rewritten. They implemented math and English first. In the fall of 2014, Common Core will be implemented basically, or the strategy is to implement it on all subjects: social studies, science, math, and English, all curriculum. And there's an interconnectivity, a reinforcement, if you will, between math and the social studies and the science and the English, where the philosophies of the left are reinforced in each class in the examples and the homework assignments. For instance,
so an immersion.
And there's a total ideological immersion, so that your examples in math will relate to something that the left agrees with, embedded and impacted with assumptions that are based on false premises. For instance, even today, the SAT test, I've studied accounts where the writing portion of the SAT for the English grade was, please explain how you would, if you were in a position to do so, address income inequality in America.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're anti-Common Core, and you talked about what.
Can I stop you there for just a second? I am anti-Common Core, but what I am is pro-freedom. I'm pro-liberty. I'm pro. I think 1 million teachers making individual decisions is better than 2 bureaucrats making all the decisions. It's the free market system at place. And so, yeah, I'm anti-Common Core, not because I'm anti-education. My mother was a school teacher for 32 years. I was an instructor pilot in the Air Force. I was a trainer at Merrill Lynch. My wife and I have owned a professional training and education company for 12 years. Education is freedom. I am so for teachers. I'm so for classical education. I want every child to have an opportunity that I had, regardless of race or skin color or national origin. I'm pro-education. I'm anti-globalist regulatory control.
Okay. So you've described your perspective, but you work with a large number of people in this cause, or to challenge this cause, whichever way you look at it. Would you say that is the planks in their platform also? That's what I'm looking for. Just as Common Core has certain elements, would most of the people that are engaged in this effort with you, would they agree that those are the things that they're concerned about also?
I believe for the most part, yeah. I mean, I think there's so many layers involved here. I mean, it is impossible in a short period of time to identify them all. I mean, mothers want to be able to help their child with their homework. Well, one of the fallouts of Common Core is Parents today are crying because they can't figure out the second grade math homework assignments. The parents are having to go to tutors to learn how to help the second grader with their math.
Sad.
But what that does is it basically cuts the umbilical cord of the relationship between mommy and daughter. I can't help you. You have to turn to the government even more, honey. Go to your teacher. Maybe she can help you. What does that do to the bond of the parent? If everything is rewritten, there's zero familiarity to the stuff that the kids are being taught, and the parents' deep desire to want to be involved in your homework assignment, but I can't help you because this is all gibberish to me. I've never seen or heard any of this. So there is the emotional reaction, there's the political reaction that you're giving way too much power and concentrated money and control in the hands of too few people, and it's a humongous top-down crony capitalist government and enterprise globalist hijacking an industry and trying to do a one-size-fits-all model. The needs of students in Tupelo, Mississippi are very different than the needs of students in the city of Atlanta. The needs of a student in Washington, the rich suburbs of Washington State outside of Microsoft, are very different than the students' needs of somebody in a cornfield in Iowa.
That's true.
And so a one-size-fits-all is utterly impossible, it's unworkable, and is the absolute opposite of limited government and local control.
Let me ask you, you're engaged with several groups in Georgia, and I'd ask that you perhaps call them out so people can know. And in fact, really that's my question. If our audience has questions about where do they learn about Common Core, I know you have a website where you have some information. Can you give us kind of a rundown of where should we go look for this information to learn more about it?
Well, thank you for that question because it's important, and I think what we want to do is not overwhelm people. We're trying to take people. My calling right now, my mission is to take people from which 7 or 8 out of 10 parents say common who, and I want to take them from that as rapidly as possible to over my dead body. And how do you do that without sounding conspiratorial or angry or flooding them with information? They don't have 3 hours to go research. They just need to go, okay, tell me the story so I can get my arms around it, and then I'll go process it. So on my blog, which is robcunninghamusa.com, I have a Common Core tab. And on that Common Core tab is just 4 very short videos, 2.5 minutes long. There's one called Building the Machine. It's a trailer to a movie about Common Core. It's 2.5 minutes and explains who the players are, what the sales pitch is, and then what the reality is of what Common Core is all about. There's a second one that talks about indoctrination, which is how the powers that be really understand that if they can control the education system and put their imprimatur on the education system, it goes back to the saying, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the child. They understand. Karl Marx understood it. Leaders for decades have understood it. For thousands of years have understood it. There's a video on there that's about, the longest video is 9 minutes. And it's by Bill Whittle with Afterburner.
Oh, yes.
And Bill Whittle, he's a talented, very intellectual, brilliant teacher. And he can explain Common Core better than I could ever hope to. From A to Z, what is it, who's involved, why was it put in place, and what are the politics driving? Socrates said thousands of years ago, life is political. There's politics involved in everything. But Bill explains extremely well what is Common Core, how's it going to impact you, who are the players, and why we should care. Correct. And he does a great job.
Good. So in closing, is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience as we close out this session? I think you've given them a great picture of what Common Core is, why they should have concerns about Common Core, and also some resources to go learn more about it. Is there anything else you want to shake the bushes with here to tell the people? Or
well, I'd just like to say that I feel like I am blessed to live in the greatest country in the world, and it's not a perfect country. It never will be. We can always continuously improve. But my mom was a school teacher. I'm the man that I am today because she loved me and she cared for me and she took care. Members in the civil rights movement fought and bled and died for a good quality education. And sadly, we're having people in both parties in the 60s, they stood in front of college universities and they wouldn't let anybody come in. They stood on the steps of the University of Alabama and they wouldn't let minorities and blacks in. Today, those same people have turned around and they're not letting people out. They want them trapped. They won't let charter schools, or they're shutting charter schools down as we speak in New York. The inner city kids that go into lotteries because of minorities that want their kids to have a great education are being cut off at the knees and hamstrung. And now we're starting to kind of see why. If they can control who can come in and who can leave, and then they can pour into that system the ideology they want to pour into it, it's disrespectful to the teachers. It's dishonest in what their intent is. Whether you're left, right, libertarian, atheist, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, it doesn't matter. We ought to be respected enough to have the freedom of choice, the freedom to educate our kids or pull our kids and teach our kids how we want without them being tested to death, without 500 different points of data being collected, not only on the child, but on the child's family, the parent's voting record, the parent's health records, the child's medical records, everything about that child, and then constantly that information being data mined by other government agencies so that products are then sold back and forth. And we're talking hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars every year in this crony capitalistic model that is disrespectful to all humans. This isn't a Republican or a Democrat issue.
It's true.
This is a freedom issue. And the spirit of innovation and the spirit of liberty is all about us being able to fail and for us to be able to succeed. This one-size-fits-all, monotonous, we know best, everyone fall in line. Teachers are going to be line factory workers and students are going to be Honda Accords. And we're going to measure success by the number of deficiencies, but every car is going to look exactly the same and it's going to come across. And if the teachers want to try to exercise some control, or the parents want to exercise some control, or the local mayor or school board want to try to sit down and exercise control, folks, it's going to be impossible when the global copyrights to all of these standards are owned outside the United States of America. The local PTA under Common Core might as well be a local wine and cheese party because you're not going to talk about your school curriculum and you're not going to be able to change it. It is a stripping of all of our liberties. And as they say, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
And if you can't have good, healthy debate and be able to change things and adapt and make them better, look at the Khan Academy. What an unbelievable model.
Yes,
free, infinite, and the free. The Khan Academy can teach any child complex calculus in Africa for free. Well, who's going to have time for that if one standardized SAT test and one standardized fourth grade test has got to have exactly this sort of regimen of training? You're not going to have any time to listen to anything the Khan Academy has to say because it's not the Common Core way. So I think if people really understood what's going on here, they would revolt.
Yeah. I would agree. I appreciate your spending some time with us and explaining that to us.
Yes,
and
sir.
I look forward to having you back as
pleasure.
things develop. So,
My pleasure.
well,
Thank you.